The 13th of September, the British ships begin bombarding the fort. Probably the big flag was up initially, but it starts to rain. The big flag is taken down. A smaller flag put up in its place. And the defenders hunkering down. Initially, the fort's guns firing back. As one eyewitness said, you can see the shot strike their frigates in many instances. That was a Private Douglas who wrote that. And so you wonder what he saw. You know, holes going into the sails of the British ships. Maybe a splinter flying off the ship from a hit, or the geysers of water from the near misses. Behind the fort's guns were furnaces, brick ovens, kind of like brick oven pizza, except you put a cannonball in there and then ladle it out when it's hot, firing heated shot against the enemy ships. So the British backed out of the range of the fort's guns, not willing to risk losing any of those precious ships. Even as early as 1030, one of the British officers writes, "I don't think there's anything we can do to take this city of Baltimore. I think that the land troops, in a sense, I'm paraphrasing, better hang it up because the city is too retired behind the forts." However, just as Armstead is counting on inspiration to keep the garrison together, the British, their tactic is now to wear the garrison down. All right, maybe a head-on assault is not going to work, but if we have this prolonged bombardment, deny the Americans sleep, make the Americans feel utterly helpless. At 2 miles where the British ships anchored, those Special 5 bomb ships, and they had names like Terror and Meteor and Devastation, you know. But if you think about it, you think of the message that is sending, just the names of the ship. You know, I mean, we don't name ships today the Terror or Devastation. You can imagine what the world community would think of a country that would name its ship something like that. Whereas I think for the British, that was part of what they tried to express. You know what? If you think you can withstand the might of the British Empire, we will devastate your cities and terrorize your people, and we want you to know it. And each one of those ships could fire a 200-pound shell 2 miles. And there's one outside of this building. And you know, just take a look at that. That thing's massive. It will go a mile high in the sky before beginning its descent as the fuse slowly burnt down. And if you timed it just right, it would burst right over the target. So now here.
Which is the case in front of Baltimore too, is 100 feet on deck, 90 feet at the waterline, but only 77 at the keel. So you have a vessel that can carry all the cargo or passengers or whatever the heck you want it to do on deck that's 100 feet long. It still has the long water line to allow it to go relatively quickly, but it turns like a vessel that's only 77 feet long because that's all that's at the bottom of the water. What this does, these two things, in order to get the boats winding up these winding rivers and not running around, or if they did run aground, not putting the entire boat into the mud, what that did was it eliminated almost all resistance to forward motion and created tremendous resistance to sideways motion. So when these boats were refitted to be privateers and given large crews and guns and more sail area to go out onto the Atlantic Ocean, they could sail faster and they could sail closer to the wind than anything else coming out of the States, and certainly anything else in the British Navy. So that inspiration, or that success, caused the British to get very irritated. The list of Baltimore schooners that had more than a dozen prizes is pretty high. One individual in particular who was commander of Comet, and then of Chasseur, which was the original namesake, the Pride of Baltimore, is where that comes from. And it's also the French word for hunter. So what better name for a privateer? It's actually out there hunting, and you're using a French name to further irritate the English, who have always hated the French. He sunk or captured over 18 British prizes, and at one stage captured a prize, did not take it as a prize, told the captain, "You're free to go as long as you do me this favor." And the favor was to take a note that parodies Admiral Coburn's blockade notice of the American coast, and says that Thomas Boyle, having sufficient power in his one ship with 18 guns, places the entirety of England, including Ireland and all the British Isles, under siege for the remainder of the war.
The Americans had gunboats behind it and sunken ships behind that. So the British would have to fight off the guns of the fort, fight off the men, saw through the thick iron chain, fight off the gunboats, raise the sunken ships, and yeah, then they could come in. But to get an idea of the big cannons that stood in their way, we're going to do a cannon firing exercise. Everyone has their own job to do, and we will show that. The sailors right now are maneuvering the cannon barrel. A lot of African Americans were actively involved in the maritime trade. If you're a free African American, the Navy, the sailor, they were always hiring. Interesting enough, the U.S. Navy did have integrated crews during the War of 1812. If you were an escaped slave and you wanted to stay away, well, the Navy's great because now you got your closure on a ship and you're way on the other side of the water where the slave catcher can't get you. But everyone had a job to do to fire the cannon. To get a sense of that, we're going to go ahead and load the gun. Sponging the gun extinguishes the embers from the previous shot.
Step in, step in.
Again, a cannon like that will throw an 18-pound iron ball about 1 mile to 1.5 miles.
Handle lever, live round.
Balls an hour.
Live round exercise.
A large gun on the end will fire a 36-pound iron ball that distance.
Bam.
So again, these are the round shot, knock holes in the ship, splinter.
Help! Just two.
We have 4 cannons to use our imagination. The upper gun battery would have had about 13. The lower gun battery would have 13 as well. They're just doing a dry exercise now. They're winching the gun into position. That cannon weighs as much as a Volkswagen Beetle.
Heave! 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 One more. Heave! Well.
Now, after you've rammed down the powder and the ball, there's a little hole at the back end of the gun, and the officer will prime the gun.
All right, Robbie.
You use those hand spikes, they look like little wooden crowbars, big wooden crowbars. Shim the gun left and right and tilt the barrel up and down. That's how you aimed it. The brass pick picks open the bag. On his right hip, he has a pouch of very fine gunpowder, tears one, pours into the hole, leaving a powder train from the open bag on the inside to the top of the gun. The man on the end, you can see he's working that little fuse. That's called slow match. Just like a string, you know, think like a clothesline string, soaked in potassium nitrate. He's blowing on it to keep it glowing. That's what you use to set the gun off. On a day like today, dry, breezy, sunny, easy job. During the real bombardment, pouring down rain, high humidity, and you're getting shot at. Very much of a harder job to keep that from going out.
Clear! Fire!
Wow.
Neighbors know it.
An image of Boyle, a proclamation that he issued, which was posted at Lloyd's Coffee House in London in the late summer of 1814, while Boyle and his ship, the Chasseur, was patrolling the British Isles. He issued this audacious proclamation, partially in jest, declaring that he and his one ship are imposing a blockade on the entire coast of the British Isles. Of course, impossible to enforce, but it actually had consequences because the many prominent merchants, upon seeing this, began to panic. They had already been losing ships to Boyle and other privateers. Naval ships were dispatched to track Boyle. Watchtowers were put up along the coast. Ships had to travel in convoy across the Irish Sea, all because of Boyle and other privateers, and of course insurance rates went through the roof. So merchants began pressuring the British government to bring a hasty end to the war. Complementing his proclamation is the ship's log, which you see here. We have a number of ship's logs that belong to privateers during the War of 1812 in our collection. Other items, a photo print of the burning of Havre de Grace,